Hi folks, G3 here, and welcome to another instalment of my journey to go green. In today's episode, I'm going to be trialling 3 different ways of growing my sweet corn seeds to see which is the best. I normally use a root trainer, so I'm going to try that. I'm also going to trial using a toilet roll tube, and I've been given this paper potter to use newspaper, so I'm going to trial that as well. So I'm going to give it a go, see which is best for me, and I'll share that with you so that hopefully you might be able to learn from my experience. So I've collected 5 toilet roll tubes, so that's what I'm going to use for those. And I've got a solid oak big paper potter by Nether Wallop Trading Co. The economic and eco-friendly way to make plant pots from old newspapers. And how this works is you've got to cut dry newspaper into strips, fold the strips in half lengthways, roll the strip around the potter and fold excess paper over the bottom of the potter and press the potter firmly onto the base and twist. Remove pot from potter and fill with compost ready for your seedlings or seeds, and the paper pot biodegrades when planted into the garden. I've had this for a few years, so it's about time that I started using it, so it's a great opportunity and I'll test it with the other methods. Packaged in paper. It's a very big piece, so I suppose, of course, that needs to have the paper wrapped around it. There's 2 different heights on there. I guess that you can have different height pots if needs be, and a nice solid base. That looks like a pretty good bit of kit. I'm using peat-free compost. It does have quite a few big pieces in here that I will need to remove. I should be sieving this before use because of the big items that are in here. So that's sieved, and what we have here is the detritus that's left at the bottom, the branches, the bit of wood that haven't broken down, and we're left with the finer compost here. That's much better for potting with. Starting with the toilet roll, I have seen a way to do this, and I'm going to try that, is to make a bottom of the tube by folding some over. The best way that I've seen to do this is to initially flatten the tube so you get a couple of creases. Put it on the side where the on one of the sides where the crease is, and do the same again. So you get a bit more of a square shape to it. Then take your scissors and snip about 1 inch from the bottom. So, yeah, I'm doing sort of like a couple of centimetres. And then you fold them over to create a base. One by one, folding it over to create a base. So there we go. I've got 5 pots with the bases done. So that was very easy. Next, I'll get my tray. I'll fill them each with compost. I haven't filled them right to the lip because I want there to be space for water to fit in there as well. Next, let's open our sweet corn. These are early extra sweet F1 seeds. We've got exactly 30. It's good. The sowing instructions say to sow the seeds 4 centimetres or 1.5 inches deep in 7.5 centimetre 3-inch pots. So I'm taking 5 sweet corn seeds and I'm going to pop those in here. I'm just going to give it a little push down. There we go, there's my toilet roll tube pots. Next up, I'm going to have a go at making some paper pots out of newspaper. So I need my paper potter, and I've got my box for the instructions, because I need to follow those. And I got my old newspaper. I use them for lots of things, including wrapping presents, and I will include a link up here so that you can see that video if you haven't watched it already. Really useful eco way of wrapping presents. The instructions say that I've got to cut it 23 centimetres by 58 centimetres. So a quick check. This newspaper is 60 centimetres, so that's pretty good already. 37 centimetres. So I do need to cut a bit off of there. I am just going to have a little guesstimate as to the size and see how we're doing. 23, 23. So now I've got this sized up for 23 centimetres. I can cut this one and then I can use it as a template for the other ones that I'm going to do. There we go, 23 centimetres. That's good. I'm going to need 5 in total because I'm going to do the same number as I've got for the toilet rolls. So I will do a spare. So I have 6 just in case. Right. So with these all piled on top of each other, I should then be okay to get an approximate. So I've now got 6 sheets of the right size. It says fold the strips in half lengthways. There we go. So I've folded that in half lengthways and scored along there to make sure that it's nicely in position. So roll the strip around the potter and fold excess paper over the bottom of the potter. So I'm going to use the top line on here, and I position the potter wheel there, and I'm rolling the paper around. So I've rolled it around the potter, and then it says to fold excess paper into so I've got to press the potter firmly onto the base and twist. So what it's done, it's gone and formed a little indentation at the bottom, and then if I take it off of the potter, it's quite snug on there. Okay, that's off. That was a little bit snug, but that's fine. So what I've got is a nice little paper pot, quite a few layers, so it's nice and secure, reasonable size and good height. So that's one completed. I am now going to complete the process with the others. There we go, I've got 5 pots. That's a pretty good device. I found that really, really straightforward. Once I'd done a couple of pots initially to get used to it, that was a fairly easy process. It's made some great pots. That's a really good addition to my shed. I'm going to get a lot of use out of that, but I will keep the box because it's got the instructions about the sizing on it. So I don't want to lose that. So I will keep it back in the box, and I'll keep that up on the shelf. Next thing is to plant some of the seeds in here once I've filled them up with soil. A similar process that I haven't filled right to the top, just to give it a little bit of space for the water to be in there, because otherwise it would overflow and take some of the soil away with it. I got my 5 pots filled, and I now need my 5 sweet corn kernels. So I'm going to be putting it again right in the middle. I'll push it down a little bit, about an inch down, and then I'll just cover that over, and that's potted. So there we have our planted toilet rolls and our paper pots. Now I'm going to fill some root trainers, which is what I normally use for my sweet corn. And what these are, they're a plastic framework that you can lock in place, fill with soil. And because of the way that these are built, with the ridging running down the sides, they encourage the root growth down to build some really good strong roots. Once they're grown, you can simply unlock this, open it out, and you have a nice, easily accessible piece of soil with the plant and the good root structure in that you can lift out and plant. So it's a really good way. I use this most years and find them extremely effective at growing sweet corn plants with good root structure. Now, these are plastic. They were bought for me a long time ago, and rather than wasting them by throwing away, I keep using them. So they are a little bit tatty now, but obviously once I've finished using them. I will put them in for recycling, and hopefully they'll be able to be recycled. I know they're black, so some places won't accept that, but hopefully I'll be able to get those recycled at their end of life. But for the time being, I'm going to get as much use out of them as I possibly can. And the way these work is you use them in this framework. I've got more of these pieces, and I'm going to build them up in this supporting structure. Because these have seen some action and I've used them for many years, they're not locking together quite as well as they should do, but they still serve a purpose. There we go. So I've got my frames in place and they're ready to fill with compost. I've sieved some more compost, so now I can start filling it. Good exercise. There's quite a bit of extra debris in here, but I'll put this on the compost bin and that will break down a little bit more. I'm just shaking it to make sure that it settles down in the containers. 20 seeds to pop in here, and I've got some spare bays, so I will make sure that they're utilised with some other seeds. And I'm just going to push them down into the root trainer, and what I'll do is, because of leaving a bit of a gap, I'm going to top those up with a little bit of compost again. Right, so that's the sweet corn added, and I'm just going to top up those to cover over the gaps that are there and to make sure they're nice and full, just with that little bit of extra space for the water to sit when I water them. Now what is important, because I'm going to be having a couple of different crops in here, is to make sure they're labelled. So I'm going to write on the labels. So I've got some sweet corn in here. So I've popped that in to show that sweet corn are in there. I won't need to put a label on the toilet rolls and the paper pots because I know that that's the test that I'm doing, so I'm not going to put labels on there. I remember that. There we go. I now have my sweet corn that I'm trialling in here, and I've used some extra bays for the peas just to make sure that that's not wasted space. I've put it in a tray to make sure that it's supported because the bracket is broken on here. So just to make sure that that's fully supported, and once I've gone and watered these, I'll pop them in the greenhouse. And now they're watered, I've gone and placed the pots and trays in the potting shed. I think that the light and heat should be fine in here for them just to start developing. I don't want them to get overly hot, so I think they'll be good here, and we'll monitor the progress and see how they grow. It's been a while since I started the trial of the sweet corn, so using a few different pots. I've got the root trainers, I've got some toilet rolls, and equally I've got some paper pots that I created using my potter and some newspaper. Now it's a bit difficult, well I was going to say it's a bit difficult to judge the results. It's not particularly, in that you can see the root trainer ones, they are extremely tall and the plants look relatively healthy and the roots will be pretty good. In the toilet rolls, I've got 3 that have grown and the roots are starting to come out of the toilet rolls. They're not particularly as lush as these, they're quite small, and I've only had 1 that has grown, but the roots are quite extensive from the paper pot. What that would suggest to me is that the old-fashioned method of the root trainers is by far the best. The results are clouded a little bit though, because I'm having extreme problems at the moment with germination of things like peas. So these were planted at the same time in the root trainer. I've also had an issue with beans. Now it might be that it's the compost that I'm using. It might be the age of the seeds that I'm using. I didn't check the date. I think they were this year's seeds. They might have been last year's. Normally they'd be okay, but none of my peas, literally none of them, have germinated after a period of time, which I would expect them to germinate. And the same with beans. If it's the compost that's at fault, then that would partly explain why these haven't taken very well. If it's not the compost, then these haven't taken well because of the size and the space that they're in. The one thing to take from this is that actually this has remained intact and rigid despite being watered, as have these. They've remained steady, and when you put this in the ground, this will deteriorate and the crops will grow from it. So that seems to have worked okay. So I'm happy with these, but obviously not with how these have grown. I need to run this test again, and it means I'm probably going to have to do it next year. It's going to be too late for me to trial it with these this year, so I'll need to run it again. So the conclusion from this at the moment is that the pots are good. They're standing firm, they're rigid, and once they're in the soil, they should deteriorate and plants will grow normally. That's great. I just need to check up on the germination, and that's going to need another trial, and so I'm going to have to run that next year. There'll be another video and I'll do that at that stage. So inconclusive at the moment. So I am going to plant these out, and one thing that I am going to try is interplanting squash in between these. Now normally when I plant them I would go and have weed matting in place so that only these grow and the weeds are suppressed. But this year I'm going to try something different and try growing squash in the gaps around the outside so that I can trail them out and hopefully utilise some of the water that is going in there, because they're quite water hungry squash. So that's what I'm going to trial. The root trainers for the sweet corn, awesome as ever. I really love the root trainers. They've gone really well, and if I get one of these out I'll be able to show you how the roots are doing. So you can see the roots are poking through the bottom, and when I open it carefully so it doesn't all go everywhere, you can see you get lovely roots developing there. So that is the benefit of the root trainer. They are fantastic for that. The only trouble is obviously it's plastic, but these were bought for me. I've had them for quite some time and I'm getting lots of use out of them. But the root trainers are brilliant. These, not so good, but we'll try again. So that's it, folks. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, then please click the like button down below. And if you haven't done so already, then why not subscribe to the channel? Well, thanks for watching, folks. Until next time, bye.